may still have console wars in 2024, with Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo going toe-to-toe with each other in every recent generation, but these days don't come anywhere close to the bloodshed that we had in the 90s, with Sega and Nintendo trying their best to eliminate each other with no room for subtlety. Phrases like "Sega does what Nintendon't" are infamous for directly targeting the rival company, and Nintendo had a plethora of less in-your-face commercials to fight back too. Every new Mario and Sonic game were an attempt at outdoing the other mascot, because first-party exclusives motivated consumers to pick a side. With the Sega Dreamcast failing to live up to the sale expectations, Sega exited the console war and started releasing Sonic games on other platforms right away, which was a major shift in the gaming industry, but one that everyone benefited from at the end of the day. With the conclusion of the console wars, you'd expect the entire idea of Sonic vs. Mario to be over, and in most ways it was. But when you have such a strong lineup of characters with both of the companies on good terms in the present day, it would be a waste to not toy with the idea of continuing competition. And this concept gave birth to the Mario and Sonic video game series, which is specifically themed after the real-life Olympic Games. No one could have guessed that the first official collaboration between the two mascots would be in the form of a real-life sports game, but in a way, it makes perfect sense, since they are no longer rivals on the battlefield. Rather, they're now friends, who appeal to different audiences, but coexist within the same ecosystem of consoles. Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games 2007. It all started with Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games. This was a 2007 sports crossover game developed by Sega Sports R&D, which is a subsidiary studio within Sega aimed towards developing sports and party games. The game is officially licensed by the International Olympic Committee and makes use of many different characters from both the Mario and Sonic IPs. The main platform of the game is the Nintendo Wii, but it has a Nintendo DS port as well. The structure of both games is party, so Mario and Sonic aren't beating each other with their mushrooms or super speed. Instead, they complete challenges and beat each other at sports, which is a respectable way to keep the flames of competition alive. Although the focus is on realistic sports, the games do use some elements from their respective roots too. There are dream events in the game, which are alternate versions of real-world Olympic Games. For example, the DS port of the game has an event called the Dream Canoe, which lets players use items from the Mario Kart games against each other. Fans of both franchises were very happy to see this crossover happen, especially since it's a project that treats both IPs equally. Although those who wanted a more direct collaboration, especially in terms of gameplay, were left a bit disappointed, and it's a shame that it still hasn't happened yet. But one way or another, the game was a commercial and critical success, as it sold up to 10 million copies. Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Winter Games, 2009. Following up on the success and good reception of the first game, Sega developed Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Winter Games, which, as the name implies, is focused on winter games specifically, which can be found in real life as well. All of the previously playable characters came back, and 4 more were added to the mix, and the game could be enjoyed both using traditional controls on the Wii version, and some games supported the balance board too, since skiing and downhill racing are common themes in this game. Meanwhile, on the DS, the touchscreen and stylus were crucial to the experience like last time. This game allowed players to customize their Mii's clothing, as they could also participate in the races, and a new festival mode offered players a coherent competition that they could play from the opening ceremony and all the way to the closure. Last but not least, the DS port even included bosses such as Dr. Eggman and Bowser, who must be stopped before they could ruin the Olympics. The fact that both ports had their pros and cons made them much more than just alternate versions of each other, so a person who owned one could still have fun with the other. This game ended up selling 6.53 million copies and great reviews, which led to further sequels up ahead. Mario and Sonic at the London 2012 Olympic Games. The third game in the series took players to London, coinciding with the 2012 Olympic Games. Unlike the last 2 games, this one was released on the Nintendo 3DS, which opened the door for more creativity and an experience that was more faithful to its Nintendo Wii counterpart. This game happens to be the only title to officially come in a yellow keep case too on the Wii console. As you'd expect, this game included tons of new minigames, a bunch of reimagined ones, and tons of competition to be had between the fans of the two franchises. Interestingly, this game did not support the balance board, and focuses only on traditional controls of the console. To everyone's surprise, the Nintendo 3DS port of this game is considered the superior one, because it has 50 Olympic-based events and a story mode that shows Mario and Sonic characters teaming up to stop Bowser and Eggman from preventing the Olympic tournament from happening. The interactions you could have between the characters of the two franchises, as well as the more creative minigames and extra content, made the Wii version of the game feel a bit repetitive, as it was not too different when compared to the last two games. Regardless, the game sold enough to warrant another sequel, as the Wii version alone sold up to 2.4 million copies within the first 2 months of release. Exact sale figures are unknown, but it sold a bit less than its predecessor. Mario and Sonic at the Sochi 2014 Olympic Winter Games. Mario and Sonic at the Sochi 2014 Olympic Winter Games marked a new era for the crossover franchise, as it was released on the Nintendo Wii U instead of the Wii, and furthermore, it had no accompanying handheld port in the form of a 3DS release. This game supported the new Wii U gamepad, as well as the Wii Remote Plus, nunchucks, and more. Some events only used one of these control schemes, while others utilized multiple of them at the same time. The game failed to innovate very much and suffered from the same criticisms as the third game did, which was aimed towards the repetition of the sports feeling too similar to what players already experienced in the previous games. This led to lower sales than the usual standard of the franchise, and it also didn't help that the Wii U was already a struggling console, which hurt the potential of the game's commercial success even further. As of 2024, this game is still the most recent Winter Olympics Mario and Sonic crossover in the franchise. Mario and Sonic at the Rio 2016 Olympic Games. The fifth game in the crossover series was based on the 2016 Rio de Janeiro Olympic Games, and each event in the game was filmed in a recreated version of its real-life venue in the real-world competition. The game featured a total of 42 characters from both the Mario and Sonic franchises, and players could once again use their own custom Mii characters as participants as well. Once again, the game had a Nintendo 3DS counterpart too, and it even saw an arcade release that was available for a coin-operated experience. This game has the least amount of motion controls in the franchise up to this point, as most of the games were now playable with traditional gamepads too, and this time around, the Wii U version was reviewed more positively than the 3DS port. However, this game continued the tradition of being considered too similar to its predecessors, which led to a lower interest in terms of sales from fans. Exact sales figures are unknown, but it is believed to have been close to a flop. Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games Tokyo 2020. After taking a break for a couple of years, Sega finally came out with a new Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games sequel, which was centered around the Tokyo 2020 Olympics event this time around. The game was released on the Nintendo Switch and in arcades, while a spin-off for smartphones was released around the same year too. The game features a large list of sports, which includes new ones and those that we have seen before but have been reimagined. And the support for motion controls made a comeback too, with the Joy-Con being a great way to play them. The game features online multiplayer, split screen, and LAN multiplayer too, which makes sense, since this is essentially a party game. A new addition to the game is a 2D mode, which is based on the 1964 Summer Olympics. It features both 8-bit and 16-bit styles for Mario and Sonic characters, which puts a new spin on the franchise that we never saw before. However, the total number of playable characters is less than in previous games, sitting at just 32 this time around, and only the series regulars were able to participate in all the events, while the rest are only available as guests. Lastly, the story mode made a return too. The game was reviewed more positively than its predecessor, but unfortunately it was still criticized for its lack of innovation and laggy online multiplayer. And while its exact sales figures are unknown, it did not manage to sell as much as the first 4 games, which is a trend that is common with the franchise since the Wii U installments. The mobile port is exactly what you would imagine it to be. It's a bit similar to the main version, but watered down for smartphones. And yes, it's filled with microtransactions since it is a free-to-play application. It's not a bad port by any means, but it also feels a bit unnecessary as it does not bring anything new to the table. Young fans of the franchise can enjoy it, but that's about all you can say for it. The future. It's no surprise that fans are no longer interested in the Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, as the sales have dropped down significantly and most people don't even know when a new installment comes out. We've had so many of these games already, and there is only so much you can do with the idea of mini-games that are based on real-life sports. And it is frustrating that this is all Sega and Nintendo have done with the idea of a Sonic vs. Mario game as well. Both franchises are platformers with tons of characters, a rich history, and never-ending lore filled with powers and magic. The fact that we don't have a real versus game or an adventure where they team up against the villains or even an RPG similar to Project X Zone is absurd and a major waste of potential. The world may want another sports game collaboration between Mario and Sonic in the future, but that time is not today. But it's clear, if these two companies give us a real adventure featuring a crossover between the two rival franchises, then we can expect millions in sales again within a few weeks. Of course, granted that the games are good. Nintendo may have won the console war, but that does not mean that Mario and Sonic can't face off in a cool new video game. And that's it for the history of Mario vs. Sonic games thus far. I'm pretty excited to see where the two companies take things next for their series of crossover games. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'd love to hear from you which of these games was your favorite down in the comments below. See you next time!